Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Garrett and this is Chaos Core Tech. Now today I figured I'd show you my printing process. I've gotten a few questions here and there and I've never really highlighted what I do to print things and some of the settings I use because that's not really the focus of the channel or a focus of mine really. And quickly before we get started, I apologize if this video is a little incoherent and a little rambly. I don't really have a planned structure for this video, so we'll just see how it goes. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is my print settings and basically everything I do after I have the design downloaded. So I'm starting up from the point that I have the STL ready to go. Okay, so I load the file up into Matter Control. And yes, I still use Matter Control and not Cura. And that's just a personal preference. You can use whatever you like. And this is actually a piece for a print that is going up next week, so a little bit of a sneak preview for you there. Okay, so this is the file that I want to print. And I come in here, it's already set up for my Robo 3D, and usually from this point I can just go into the layer view and hit generate, and it'll do its thinking, and then it'll show me the steps through it right here, and I can go up to see what it's actually going to be doing in each step, and looks pretty good. And so normally those are the only steps I take. The only other thing I usually do is change the quality here. I have these presets set up. I have presets for PLA, and then I also have presets for different levels of quality. And those just basically mean layer height. Nothing else really changes. Basically low is 0.3 millimeter layer height, medium is 0.2, and high is 0.1. And for something like this, if I had the extra time, I'd go 0.1 because as you can see there, those layers will look pretty notchy when printed. It'll pretty much look just like that. So if I were to go up to high quality, and you can see at low quality it just takes about 2 hours to do, and if I change it up to high quality, it'll take considerably more than that. Roughly 3 times that much, actually. So it's loading here. Yep, 6 hours now. But if I had that time, I could step through it, and you can see that that looks much better up top here, and you wouldn't be able to notice that as much. So basically just on very curved surfaces that I want to have a lot of high detail, I go with a 0.1 millimeter layer height, and otherwise I just stick with low because even though it's called low quality, 0.3 millimeter layer height is still really good quality. And especially if you're going to be applying paint or sanding it at all, it really becomes a non-issue. Okay, so let's talk about some of my other settings. My first layer height is 0.3 millimeters, or 1 layer, and I usually go with 2 outer perimeters. And like I said before, I increase that if I know that we're going to be doing a lot of sanding on it. I also check this avoid crossing perimeters thing, and that just helps with stringing a little bit. And then I have 3 solid layers on the top and bottom. And once again, I will bump these up if I know we're going to be doing a lot of sanding. Or if I'm using a very low infill percentage, I will bump the top layers up because on curved surfaces, you can end up seeing right through the few layers that are there. And then for infill, I usually use 20. And now most of my prints up to now have not been functional. They've just been for display purposes. So they don't need to really hold any weight or anything like that. There's going to be no load on them. And I haven't found anything that 20% wasn't okay for. If I want to speed it up a little bit or don't want to use as much filament, I can check light, which is basically 10%. And that works great for most things, but I have found on curved surfaces, 10% can start to show the infill through the solid object. So most of the time I keep it at 20. My infill type is a grid. And then speed, I print almost everything at 50 millimeters per second. And that was a good speed that I found. I tried going up to 60 and it was kind of chewing through my filament a little bit. So I always go with 50 millimeters per second. I pretty much keep that for everything except for the support material and the bridges. I go 30 millimeters per second. Travel speed is 150 millimeters per second. And first layer speed is 30% of the 50. And that's just because on that first layer you want to go slow, hot, and heavy, just to help it kind of lay down and stay on the bed. And then I usually don't use rafts because they leave such a horrible mark on the bottom of the print, but I have used them in the past. So when I do that, I just come in here and check this, And skirts, I just do two loops around it. And there is a minimum extrusion length, so if I do something small, it'll do more than that. And basically the only reason I do that is just to make sure that everything's extruding right before it actually prints the object. Same thing with supports. I don't really use them that often, just in here. But when I do, I just come check this, and sometimes I'll mess with the pattern a little bit. I usually go with grids. I never check this create perimeter, because it will completely encompass everything and it'll be pretty much impossible to get those supports off. And something to call out, most of this is just presets from Matter Control. I didn't change a lot in here. I have tweaked a few things, like when I first got my printer, I went through a phase of trying to get everything perfect, but once I had that, I pretty much left it. And then I center it on the bed just so if I have something that's decently big, it doesn't accidentally go off the sides, and I don't have multiple extruders, so that's fine. And then this is just the stuff for my filament, the diameter, and I go 1.2 for the extrusion multiplier, and I find that actually gives it a really nice look on the sides, and I don't get any like crazy stringing or anything like that. It just helps the layers kind of blend together a little bit better. And then for my PLA, I use 210 degrees Celsius for the extruder, and then I use 75 for the bed temperature. And I tried at 50, and for the longest time I printed at 50, but I was having a lot of warping issues. And I think that's just due to the ambient temperature in my house. But regardless, through some testing, I bumped it up to 75, and it seems to work perfectly there, so I've left it. And that's pretty much all I care about there. Nothing special here or here. Disable the fan for the first 4 layers. And then on the printer, I just have the size set up. The Z offset is 1. And because actually when I switched to my new computer, this was set at 0 for some reason. And yeah, the nozzle is just jamming into the bed. Not a good time. And then yeah, this is just some of the extra stuff. It's pretty basic. And most of these settings are the same for all of these presets. Like I said, the only difference between them is the layer height, and sometimes I add additional perimeters. And then once I'm ready to go, I come down here and export to SD card. And then I can just put it on the SD card and it outputs the G code and everything's ready to go. Okay, so now that I have the file completely prepped and ready to print, let's talk about my print setup. Now, as most of you know, I have a Robo 3D R1 printer, not the R1 Plus. I bought mine before that edition came. I bought it in late summer of 2014, and I've pretty much been running it nonstop since then. And now, actually, let's get back to what I said in the beginning of the video, and that I don't put a lot of focus into print settings and what I do to get the print to be completed. Now, I treat my printer as a tool, sort of like a hammer or something like that. Obviously, it's a lot more sophisticated than that, but I'm much more interested in the design process. So when I go to print, I just want something to print and print reliably. I don't want to sit around and tinker with the settings, mess with all that different stuff. I just want it to work. And so I'm super lucky that I chose the R1, because at the time when I bought it, I really didn't know a lot about 3D printers, so I'm super lucky I got this one because it is super easy out of the box. It's got auto bed leveling, so I don't even have to mess with any of that. And it prints reliably, which is amazing. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what I actually do when I'm printing. So first thing I do is I take the SD card out and move it over to the controller that I got for my Robo 3D. And now this is actually the only modification I've made to this printer, and that is just to allow it to print without being tethered to my computer. And then through the menus on the controller, I preheat it, wait for it to heat up a little bit, and then before I actually start the print, I use Hairspray to give the bed a little bit more adhesion. And so the hairspray that I use is actually Aquanet. I found this as a recommendation on the Robo 3D forums. There's a guy over there that's ridiculously good with modding his printer and stuff like that, but this is what he uses, and it's worked amazingly. I just got this at Walmart, and I think this was like the really strong stuff they used in the 80s to get that giant hair, so thank God for crazy 80s hair. You just shake it up a little bit, spray it on the bed. I use a piece of paper or a magazine or whatever I have laying around to kind of shield the nozzle and protect the electronics a little bit so it doesn't get hairspray on it. And I don't know how true this is, but it seems like when I apply this and the bed's heated already, it seems to work a little bit better. I don't know the science behind that or if it's actually true or not. It's just what I do. So then after that, I go ahead and start the print. and then the Robo just takes it away. And I just want to talk briefly about how well the Robo does with its auto leveling, because I don't have to level it at all. It just does it all. It goes around and touches 9 points around the bed and figures out where it needs to be, and to get basically a perfect first layer. I've got a first layer here that I can show you. You can see how well it does here. I'm assuming most of you 3D printers out there know this, but your first layer should be just a little squished. Like, obviously it should be a solid layer, there shouldn't be any gaps in it, but it also shouldn't be round. And as you can see, it is pretty well squished right there, and I've never really had any problems with getting the first layer to stick or anything like that. And then once the print has finished, I tell it to cool down because it leaves the bed heated. And I found that once the bed cools down to around 35 degrees Celsius or something like that, the print will actually pop off of the bed on its own. And so I think that's kind of cool. I don't really have to dig at it or anything. If I do for some reason have to dig and pry it off myself, I use this tool right here. It looks like a little paint scraper. Robo actually sent this with my printer, and it's just got a little edge there, and it's like it's really stiff, so it's not like flexible or anything. I absolutely love it. And I actually use some tweezers that they sent as well, but I seem to have lost those in the past couple of weeks, so don't know where those are. But I mostly use those tweezers to get the extra filament that is extruded while it's heating up. So that's pretty much my printing process. I do want to add something in extra, and that is the filament that I use. And almost all the time I use this Hatchbox white PLA filament. And there's actually many reasons for this. And I've actually gotten some comments asking why I only use this filament, or only use white filament, instead of trying to get colors that would mix with the actual color of the model I'm printing. So the reasons for that, first of all, this filament is cheap. It's only about $20 US. You can get it on Amazon, and it is Prime enabled, so I order it and I get it in like 2 days, so that's freaking awesome. And it's extremely reliable filament. I've had zero issues with this. It prints beautifully, so that is a big reason that I stick with this. Cheap and reliable. And then the reason for the white is that it looks better on camera. I've printed with black in the past, and you just can't really see it. Even when it's fully printed and the object is off of the printer, it is still pretty hard to see the details until it's painted. So white was the obvious choice there because you can see a lot more of the details. And the reason I don't change it up from white very often is I order a lot of these at a time because I have new prints coming out every week, and I try to keep a pretty tight schedule with that. So I just need to have filament ready, and I don't always have time to like plan out what I'm making and order that color of filament just to print that one thing with it. So I just keep a lot of white around, and we're going to be painting it anyway, so that's what I do there. That also means that I have a lot of these spools laying around, so if anyone has found anything useful to do with these things, let me know. Well guys, I think I'll leave it at that. Hopefully this was helpful in some way, or at least interesting, and gives you some insight into what I do and some of my settings and stuff like that. But just keep in mind that I have set everything up to be reliable and just run, so I don't have to worry about messing with different settings and possibly not getting a print out when I need it to, and then, you know, have to delay videos and stuff like that. Alright guys, if you're wondering what to watch next, check the little eye up in the corner, and then if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button and get subscribed if you're not already. I put out new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that's all for me guys. See you next time.